world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, of our Lord 6. Well, today we're going to take a look at what is happening with Trump's Trojan War. They're not telling us the truth about any of this stuff. It is secret, and there's a hidden agenda, and we can see for ourselves what is really happening. And yet, when you look at Fox News, you have people like Maria Bartiromo. Well, this can't be happening. Trump said that he got rid of all the missiles. Yeah, right. We're going to take a look at that. We're also going to take a look at what is going on with Flock and the surveillance states and the NDAs behind the data surveillance centers. People are finding out all over the country that things are happening with Flock cameras and data centers because they've come in and gotten NDAs from the town council, and they won't even talk about it. Not until you see the construction going up or the cameras appear. This is corporate fascism toward a police surveillance state. We're going to talk about that. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Yeah, first we're going to talk about time.
Does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? If so, I can't imagine why. We've all got time enough to cry.
Yeah, does anybody really care about the Constitution or the rule of law? What is going on with this debate in Congress? Can't we just stop this insanity? As I've said before, why can't we let the states have the constitutional right to set their own time? Where did we wind up making the federal government the time lord? Where did they get this from? Well, the argument, folks, interestingly enough, and I think this is the most interesting thing about the debate. Yes, we know what an inconvenience it is and what a hassle it is, and we know that disrupting sleep causes health issues for many people. I'm learning that the hard way and trying to do the best I can to get a good night's sleep because it's really been hammered into me by Karen and by the press, the reality of just how important it is to have a consistent schedule to your sleep, a rhythm. And they disrupt that twice a year. Why? Why go through all of this? And where is your constitutional authority to do this under the Constitution? Well, they claim that they have constitutional authority to do this because of the Commerce Clause. It is the be-all and end-all of every government grab. And of course, why not? Because all their power grabs are based on printing money from the Federal Reserve. So they print this monopoly money, they bribe and they blackmail people with this monopoly money, and then they pretend that they can do it all because of commerce, the Commerce Clause. Well, here's the news flash. Of course, the Commerce Clause has been the go-to excuse for the drug war. You know, when I ask people, how in the world do you imagine that you've got the authority to prohibit drugs? Because we had to have a constitutional amendment, the 18th Amendment. We have the 21st Amendment to make alcohol legal again. And of course, we have the 10th Amendment, which I don't really care what your novel interpretation of the Commerce Clause is. The Commerce Clause was there before the Bill of Rights were put in. As a matter of fact, one could argue that the Bill of Rights were put in to correct that presumed flaw of the Commerce Clause. Maybe if you read it that way, perhaps James Madison and the other founders saw that and said, well, I think that's an open loophole for federal power. We need to close that loophole. We need to say that the powers of the states are reserved to the states and to the people unless they are expressly and explicitly given to the government in the Constitution. Well, it wasn't done that way. Why didn't they use the Commerce Clause to prohibit alcohol? Because they knew it was a prevarication. They knew it was a perversion of the Constitution. That would have been a lot easier just to wave their hands and say, well, we can do whatever we want to because of the Commerce Clause. I mean, you're making alcohol over here, you're making bourbon in Kentucky or whatever, it's crossing state lines, we're going to control that. And the novel extension of the Commerce Clause by the FDR regime was that even if you're growing, I forget what the crop was, maybe it's corn or something, even if you're growing a crop in your state and you're selling it in your state and it's not crossing lines, you still have to obey our quotas because they put out a quota system. This is how much you will grow and we will pay you not to grow. He says, I don't want to be a part of that system. I just want to grow my crop and sell my crop. I said, no, you can't do that because even if you're doing that within the state, that is affecting commerce outside of the state because of the marketplace inside of your state. So those types of novel extensions for the Commerce Clause. And again, the basis on which they pretend they have the authority for the war on drugs. I've had lawyers on my show give me that answer with a straight face. And as a matter of fact, it was a lawyer who was with, let's see, what was it called? It was Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, right? And it was a lot of former prosecutors and attorneys and judges and police officers who were against prostitution. It is a prostitution, isn't it? Prohibition. And they had seen the light. They had seen that using law enforcement to try to solve a spiritual issue never is going to work. Never going to work. And so they'd come around and they opposed it. As a matter of fact, one of the things I learned from him was the UN's involvement in the war on drugs, because I didn't realize that had come from the UN, the schedule of 4 different items and which drugs are going to go in. You know, we had marijuana Schedule 1 drug, which says it has absolutely no medical use, and everybody knew that was a lie. But they did it anyway. And so this whole thing has been a sham. Well, the same issues are there with all the time stuff. They claim that they can do this because of commerce. It gives the power to regulate interstate and foreign commerce, they said. Non-uniform time observance disrupts railroads, airlines, buses, trucking, broadcasting, shipping, and other cross-state economic activities. I'm sorry. I can listen to somebody who is broadcasting. They may be broadcasting, at 6 to 9 in California. I can listen to them on the East Coast. It's 3 hours later. It's 9 to midnight or whatever, but I can still listen to them even if it's live like that. That's not a disruption, number one. Number two, if you're worried about your watches or you're worried about your smartphones, these things know where they are. They can adjust their time automatically if they don't do it already. This is utter nonsense. This is going back to imagining some kind of railroad days or something where the main timepiece that everybody set their watch to was the town clock. And so those railroads that were driving a lot of this stuff because they wanted to have a uniform time, not just across state lines, but even within states. But this is an anachronism, to say the least. The idea that they have this power because inconsistent local times would create chaos for national economic activity. How in the world could you say that with a straight face? Transportation networks, federal operations, all this. This is way before we had GPS, folks. What an obsolete approach to all this. And so the question is, does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? Does anybody really care about the law? And do we have time enough to cry about what they have done to our Constitution? Well, while this is being debated, what is not being debated is whether or not Congress has the authority to set the time. That's just assumed, and I should say usurped. And so the House has passed a bill that would make daylight savings time permanent. And why not allow people to set whatever time standard they want to go in standard time permanently, they want to go in daylight savings time permanently. If they want to change the time 5 times a year, let them do that as well. Everybody would move out of that state, but that's not the federal government's prerogative. So the House passed this overwhelmingly, and Trump got behind it. So I thought, well, maybe they're going to get rid of this insanity. The main thing that is bothering people, and this was their slogan, ditch the switch. Let's not change the time twice a year. Let's just pick one and go with it. But the bigger issue, I think, is the Constitution. And yet another example of how they have absolutely no respect for the Constitution. Of course, we get reminded of that on a daily basis with the drug war. So who opposes this? Well, the opposition is bipartisan, as Newsweek points out. And what is the basis of the opposition? Well, some of these northern states, the kids are going to have to go to school in the dark. What a tail wagging the dog argument that is. You control these schools, the government, so just change the hours of the schools if you want. If you're concerned about that, change the hours of the school. Don't run everybody through this issue. Don't destroy the Constitution for something like that. But of course, we turn everything upside down for the government schools. They are key for indoctrination. And so we have to live like serfs, never owning a home because of our property taxes. And most of the property taxes go to paying for these schools that have multiplied like a cancer. So at the center of all this is Tom Cotton. Now we're talking about clocks, and you know the old adage that even a broken clock is right twice a day, if it is an analog clock, that is. But Tom Cotton is like a digital clock. He is never right.
Maybe he needs to wait one cotton picking minute or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, he's a cotton picking wrong on everything. He always cotton picks the wrong side on every single issue. Rabidly pro-war, rabidly pro-Israel. This guy is completely authoritarian. He has blocked the effort in the past to fast-track the legislation last October, as a matter of fact. He's argued that permanent daylight savings time would make winter mornings darker and less safe for school children. Well, change the time. It's not that difficult. Other Republicans voted against it, from North Carolina, Ted Budd, as well as Fisher of Nebraska, Jerry Morgan of Moran of Kansas, Tim Sheehy of Montana. I could go on. It's a long list of people. And they're not all northern states either. You got a lot of people in Mississippi and southern states that are doing this. But here's another argument against it. And perhaps this is the prevailing issue because we know where Tom Cotton lies on all of these different issues. And he's, like I said before, is rabidly pro-Zionist, one of the most pro-Zionist people other than Donald Trump. The Orthodox Jewish organizations have come out lobbying against changing the time. They said that it would make their morning prayers that are tied to sunrise have an issue. Well, they've got their own calendar. So why don't you have your own time schedule as well? I mean, they have a different calendar that they use for Passover, for things like this, why Passover and Easter fluctuate different times. The Coalition for Jewish Values said the change would disrupt prayer schedule for observant Jews, while the Orthodox Union Advocacy Center says that it has allies in the Senate opposing the bill. So there you go. If the Zionists don't want us to change the time, we'll have to go with it. It's either going to be the Zionists or the schools who control everything, but it will not be the Constitution. You can bet on that. Well, let's take a quick look at the economy. And of course, gas prices are going up well above $4 a gallon again as Donald Trump is struggling with his tar baby war. That's the animated thing that I put out at the very beginning of this, an allegory of the Brer Rabbit and the tar baby. And that really is what he's gotten into. A senseless war in Iran, and our current administration is hiding a lot of this, and it is terrible. It's not serving the American people, nor does it serve anywhere else in the world. The entire world is looking at this saying, you're going to drive us into a global depression. Except Israel doesn't care. Israel wants that to happen. Meanwhile, White House spokesperson said oil and gas prices will plummet back to pre-conflict level as the U.S. military degrades Iran's ability to attack vessels. I thought that was done a long time ago. I mean, we were told we got rid of their Air Force and their Navy, assuming that they ever had any. But as all this is happening, it is news to Maria Bartiromo. She doesn't know how in the world these attacks that happened over the weekend could have possibly happened. I mean, Donald Trump told us that he had all this stuff taken care of.
You know, CENTCOM says that there will be outsized action in retaliation, but I don't understand how it's possible that Iran has the capabilities to fight this way and continue to try to lash out at countries and U.S. military bases, because the U.S. has obliterated Iran's military, and the president continues to reiterate that.
Yeah. I mean, how could this be? I mean, if we got reality, don't believe your eyes, believe that lying sack of filth. Donald Trump, who lies about every single thing. Yeah, don't believe what you see out there. These casualties can't be real because Donald Trump said they didn't have any bombs or missiles left. Just amazing. Even if the fighting ends, experts say don't expect to see any change in production until at least the first quarter of 2027. Meanwhile, in Europe, they're having a heat wave, a tropical heat wave, and it's becoming an energy crisis for them. They got to run the air conditioners, which many of them don't have because it's not usually hot enough that they need an air conditioner.
And it's always hilarious when I hear Europeans talking about how hot it is, and I go check their temperature, and it's something like 88 degrees. Like, oh, you poor babies, how you must suffer.
Yeah.
There was one year we were in Texas where it was 110 degrees every day in July and August, if memory serves. It was 60 days of 110, and I didn't have air conditioning in my car.
That's right. And we had, when we were moving and packing up the van and everything in May of 2022, I think it was, right? Yeah, it was May of that year. Anyway, it was over 100 degrees every day in May. And we were dying taking that stuff out, especially Lance. He's done a lot of heavy lifting with that stuff. Anyway, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate now reached the highest level in almost a year. It's been hovering around 6.5, so it's fractionally higher. But things are not getting any better in terms of affordability. Even homes in the most affordable price points are a stretch for most buyers because of the high interest rates. Pending home sales in the country declined 2.2% in the month ending July 12th. And of course, Trump doesn't care at all. I mean, just his utter contempt. They came up with a Band-Aid fix, which really isn't going to help people. It's another one of these deals that's kind of tantamount to Trump's fix of, well, just let's do 50-year mortgages. How about that? We'll make you a lifetime slave to the banks, and you'll really never own anything, not even in the pretended sense. You know, we'll keep the property tax going, and we'll have a 50-year home mortgage. Well, as many people pointed out, that only works to the advantage of the banks. Imagine that Trump would come up with a scheme that is to the detriment of the average American and the middle class and would be a boon to the banks. Well, he refused to even look at the Housing Act that came out of Congress, which wasn't even a very good act. What it was doing was raising the amounts that you could borrow from various government agencies. And so that, again, doesn't really help with affordability. It's the regulatory burden that Congress has put on people and the things that have raised the price of cars and houses to the point where they're basically unaffordable. And so Trump, however, refused to sign that bill. He said, I want the Save America Act passed. We got to fix these elections. Well, there's so much wrong with the elections. And as I pointed out before, Trump won an election when Obama was president. Trump won an election when Biden was president. Trump lost an election when he was president. And part of that was because he introduced a whole new corruption vector, the vote by mail stuff. It's been corrupt from the get-go in terms of ballot access, debate access, how they count the votes and all the rest of this stuff. And it was corrupt with electronic voting. And then they just made it a lot worse with the vote by mail stuff. But this is something that has been going on for a very long time. And they even joke about it. The CIA jokes about how they have rigged the election. Here's CIA former director James Woolsey having a good laugh on Fox News about how they rig elections.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Iran?
Probably, but
probably
it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians, we
don't do that now, though. We don't mess around.
How about Iran in 53?
Only for a very good cause.
Can you do that? Do a Vine video on this former CIA director.
Only for a very good cause in the interests of democracy.
All right, thanks for being here.
Yeah, what a joke. Yeah, we don't assassinate people. We don't start wars. We don't rig elections, do we? Yeah, well, we got to keep those commies out. Or we got to get those oil companies in. That was what they did with Iran in 1953. Rigging the election was the seminal event in this long, sad history between America and Iran. And it's only getting worse every single generation. You think they rig elections in the U.S. for a good cause? James Woolsey was the former CIA director at the time when he played the role of president in the first one of the germ games, Dark Winter. So yeah, he likes to have a little laugh every once in a while. I bet he's laughing up his sleeve at all this COVID stuff. I did that. I played the role of Donald Trump 20 years before Trump did it. We'd been practicing this thing all along. That's the guy, James Woolsey. Well, again, Trump would never even sign a Band-Aid housing bill. He just wants his agenda and only his agenda. I want that Save America Act in there. We got to have honest elections, says the guy who gave us a whole new era of corruption. But the bottom line is it did become law. If the president doesn't sign a bill after it's presented, after 10 days, it becomes law automatically. So we will see the Housing Act has now become law. And you will see that it doesn't make any difference. And when we look at what is happening economically in the bigger picture, the bigger short that is out there, there's an article from QDR Finance, Fringe Finance, and his highlight was, he said, they're doing it again. And they are doing it again. They're doing exactly the same scam that they did in 2008 with the garbage mortgages. But now they're doing it with corporate and commercial real estate loans. Remember, Gerald Celente has harped on this for the longest time. He's saying, look at the banks are underwater on all these these commercial real estate loans and it really escalated with the lockdown and people moving out and working from home and things like that. And they've got a way to cover this up. This is why this hasn't blown up. They're doing the same thing with commercial real estate bad debt and corporate bad debt that they did with home mortgages. And he points this out. He said, when you get assets that are so toxic, so illiquid, somehow, though, they become safe when you rearrange them, when you rename them, and when you place an insurance company between the losses and the people who are buying them. Have we seen this game before? Yes, we have. As a matter of fact, he says, according to Bloomberg, he said UPS and other firms have been exploring structures that package stakes and private credit funds into bonds because perpetual private credit vehicles do not fit neatly into conventional rating models. So bankers are looking to add insurance wrappers that allow portions of the deals to inherit the insurer's stronger credit profile. Yeah, you just fold it all together and you put it under a corporation that's had a great reputation on Wall Street, like AGI, which is what they did under the real estate stuff, and you just keep this scam going forever. And a lot of that type of thing is really what is sustaining not only the commercial real estate bust, but also the AI boom. In this particular case, they're doing it yet again. Wall Street has added another layer of genius. The credit default swaps. Yeah, isn't it interesting that Howard Lutnick and company called this crypto scam act that they put through the Genius Act? Yeah, we're geniuses, and we're going to just rip all you guys off, and you're not even going to know about it because we're going to lie to you. We're going to do it in secret. AGI's financial products division sold enormous amounts of CDS protection on mortgage-related securities. They collected fees up front. They initially posted very little collateral because everyone treated the company's high credit ratings as a substitute for cash. We don't have to worry about that. AGI is behind this, right? Then they used the broader organization's pristine rating to guarantee complex financial bets. But it was the rating from the insurance company that was the magic wand that made it all happen. That says QDR Finance. So they're doing it again. Now, less than 2 decades later, Wall Street is again using insurance guarantees to turn difficult-to-rate credit exposure into highly rated securities. What could possibly go wrong? Besides the exact same thing that already went wrong, the underlying private credit assets are garbage, as I'll put it politely, he uses a different term. And I've written about this on my blog nonstop, says QDR Fringe Finance. It is a beautiful ecosystem. Private funds need money, insurance companies need yield, banks need fees, Ratings agencies need business, and regulators need to remain comatose. Everybody gets exactly what they want until the whole thing winds up landing on the average taxpayer, the average saver, or the average retail investor somehow. We're the ones who get left holding the bag. Well, when you look at your bag that you're holding at the grocery store, 28 items that they put in a shopping cart bag back in 2020, you can get that for $64.50. Today, those same 28-item grocery order from Target would cost $158 instead of $64. That was a viral post. Over 1 million people have seen that. And understand that when we're talking about that kind of increase, I mean, we're looking at, from $64 to $158. That really, most of that is from Donald Trump and his policies. Whether you're talking about the economic chaos of 2020 or what he has done since he's gotten back in office with tariffs and wars and all of the rest of the stuff, yet nowhere in this article is Trump mentioned. Nowhere. This is by Michael Snyder. He does not want to criticize Trump, even now. Meanwhile, Trump is out there putting 50% tariffs on Canada now. Always ramping this up. And why? Because it's not about economics, it's about egonomics. He's upset because they did a deal with China on electric vehicles. And so he wants to get revenge over this. He's threatening to reignite a trade battle with Canada. 50% tariffs on certain Canadian goods, including electrical equipment, machinery. The steepest tariffs his administration has levied against any country. I mean, he said he was going to go up over 100% on China, but that never happened because, again, he's just a blowhard liar about everything. And it's good that he's a blowhard liar about. We don't want him to do most of the things that he says he's going to do. The president has recently threatened tariffs against Canada because of wildfire smoke. Again, it's whatever mood he's in or whatever personal grievance he's got. I'm not saying the wildfire smoke is not important. It is, but it's whatever grievance he has. Or if he doesn't like the leader of a country, he goes after them. So Ontario Premier Doug Ford came at him again. He said, immediately encouraged Canadians to retaliate. He said, if these tariffs proceed, Canada should respond tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar. Unlike the levies that Trump has enacted against Canada, there will be no carve-outs for goods that are covered by the trade pact known as the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement. This is Trump's replacement for NAFTA that he boasted about in his last administration. And I said at the time, we don't want to have our trade managed by some supranational organization. For me, it was a sovereignty issue. It wasn't even about an economics issue. When we look at NAFTA, what happens with those types of treaties? You wind up with arbitration that is taken out of the hands of the sovereign country. It was a bad idea to start with, but it was his idea, and he boasted about it. Now he doesn't like it at all. He wants to put 50% tariffs on Canada. Meanwhile, when you look at his tyrannical federal police, you want to know what federal police are going to look like? Take a look at his eyes. We just had another person, an innocent person, killed. This is a Mexican tourist. People are so afraid of these masked, plainclothes, authoritarian thugs that are attacking people on the street that when they started to come after this guy who was a Mexican tourist, he was visiting St. Augustine, I should say. That's the way it's pronounced in Florida. But he started running, and he was constantly looking behind himself. He tripped, and he fell in front of an 18-wheeler, killed him. A man with a family and a small business out of Mexico. We have seen this over and over again. People get afraid of the government. They run, and then the government sees that as a license to kill. In this particular case, they didn't kill him. He slipped and fell in front of a truck. Well, we're getting at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back.
analyzing the globalists' next move. And now, the David Knight Show.
Yes, welcome back. I got a comment here from Gard Goldsmith of Liberty Conspiracy. He says, yes, the Commerce Clause. Commerce Clause, which is their green light to ignore the rest of the Constitution, right? Which they say lets them screw up commerce and anything tied to it. You know, it's interesting, too, when you look at it. The Commerce Clause has been mostly used for prohibition of things, prohibition of drugs, most notably. But now prohibition of determining your own time standard that you have and so forth. The Commerce Clause was really there to stop the purpose of the Commerce Clause, the legitimate purpose of it, before it was hijacked and twisted to their own devices. The purpose of it was to keep one state from erecting barriers in terms of commerce. You know, things like tariffs, for example. The founders of the country were for free trade. Free commerce, no entangling alliances. That was what Washington was looking for. George, that is, not Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals. And so it's been perverted in everything. It was there to take down regulations and regulatory walls. Instead, it has been used to erect them around everything, which kind of reminds me, at the time of the Revolution, it's reported that George Washington said, somebody was talking to George Washington, and they said, well, you talk all the time about liberty as if we don't have liberty in England. And he said, well, you walk about freely, but it's between high walls. And those walls, folks, have gotten a lot higher, and they've closed in on us. I feel when I look at these government pronouncements and regulations and how they're expanding in different ways, I feel like the characters in Star Wars that went down to the garbage dump chute, all of a sudden the walls start closing in on them. Well, as we talk about walls closing in, LifeSite News was cheering Trump's Department of Education for defending homeschool parents from a couple of woke podcasters. I'm not quite ready to cheer the Trump Education Department. It should not exist. We have been promised from its creation. It was created during 1980. There was a presidential election that was going on at the time, and Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education. Ronald Reagan, as a candidate, promised that he was going to end it. We have been lied to by one Republican after the other in terms of getting rid of the Department of Education. It still is there. Nothing has changed. And so I think it's fitting that Trump put in Linda McMahon, who is the wife of the guy who ran WWE wrestling. It's all phony, folks. It's all phony, heels versus heroes. It truly is. But here's a couple of liberal podcasters who I thought it was pretty amazing what they actually had to say. They are perpetually offended by anybody who has any traditional values. And one of them, this is a podcast called I've Had It. Again, like I said, perpetually offended. I guess they just get on this podcast and gripe about what conservatives are doing.
And this is during the 100-year liberal ascendancy, where every single policy has been a push towards more modern ideas of liberalism, leftism, Marxism. These people are perpetually unhappy. Yeah, they cannot be satisfied.
Well, if you want power, you're not going to be satisfied until you've got all power, and there's no such thing. And so they're constantly looking to get every last little bit of it. She said, you will not believe how many people in Bible study homeschool their kids. And you think, I would worry about that. I just think homeschooling is a bad idea from soup to nuts. So here she is. She's in a Bible study, and she doesn't understand why the Christians in Bible study are homeschooling their kids. I think there's something wrong with that Bible study.
Yeah, her. She should leave.
No,
Except
it's pretty
she's
clear. It's pretty clear in the Bible why we have families. And it's pretty clear in the Bible what the role of parents are. If you go to Deuteronomy 6, it says when you walk with your kids in the way, they're going to ask you, what does this mean? What does that mean? And you tell them what that means. That's your role as parents. That's what God has given you to do. So do it. And the people in this Bible study ought to be telling that. They ought to go back and read Deuteronomy to start with. Anyway, she said, I think it's just a bad idea. She says, I think it's effing weirdest as F So she's very articulate, isn't she?
What a smart lady. I can understand why this woman doesn't want to teach her kids.
Yeah.
They might come out as dumb as I am.
She thinks it's weird that you just want to be around your kids all day and all night, she says.
Well, if they're like her, I can understand that too.
Can you imagine what her kids are like? Yeah, I'm sure they've gone their own way now. Said, I don't trust anybody that wants to be with their kids 24/7. For me personally, it was that I would have gotten up on my hands and knees and strapped them to my back and crawled to get them to school every day, just to get them where I wasn't. See, this is a mentality that is causing us to have the schools running our time zones even and is taxing us to death in our homes. It's this mentality. I want that daycare that's out there, and I want you to pay for it. And yet it's far more than just her shirking her parental responsibility and for the kids that she obviously does not love and wants to be rid of them. How sad. But she says, I'm also talking about these freaks of mega churches where they have schools that, I think they're just crazy indoctrination factories. They're hate academies. I think she went to an indoctrination factory. I think she went to a government school, and I think they indoctrinated a lot of hate into her. She said these people fear critical thinking more than anything on the planet. They have to be taught a script of reality. This is coming from the people who cheer transgenderism.
This word gets thrown around a lot, but I have never seen a more severe case of projection in my life. The liberal worldview is one that can only exist within this modern, curated bubble that has been created over the last 80 to 50 years, realistically, maybe 100 if you really stretch it, where because of modernization, we have all these jobs that don't really matter, and people like her can be a podcast host.
That's right. Yeah, talk about critical thinking. Where is her thinking at all? She's just critical, right? And so the question is, whenever we look at education, you need to understand that education is not about nuts and bolts. It's not about vocational training, right? It's not about how do we use a computer, how do we use AI, which they want to do out there now. No, it's about giving people the tools of learning. And that's really what it's fundamentally about. But it was R.L. Dabney right after the Civil War who actually, in his opinion, the Civil War was made possible because the attitudes that were inculcated in a lot of the government schools up north. He was writing from the South. And he said, what we're going to find is, as you get this push for government schools, and he went through and he described what was going to happen. What was going to happen to education, what was going to happen to civilization, what was going to happen to the family. He was spot on in every regard. And he said, the question is this. He says, you can't have a government school without violating the First Amendment, and that is the free exercise of religion. Why did he say that? Because he said, fundamentally, education is not about how do you do this, how do you do that. It's not about reading and writing and arithmetic, right? It's really about values and putting this all together into a bigger picture. And so somebody's values are going to be taught. It's going to be taught as a worldview. It's going to be taught as a religion. And so now we see things like DEI and CRT, critical race theory, and transgenderism and all the rest of this stuff. And before that, we had an agenda that was there to deconstruct and to despise America. Of course, Pete Buttigieg, his father specialized, his career at Notre Dame was to study the works and the life of Antonio Gramsci, the guy who said, we don't need to have a communist revolution like they did in Russia. What we need to do is we need to march through the institutions. We need to take them over from the top, which they proceeded to do. Now, that was Pete Buttigieg's father. He sent Pete to study at Harvard, and he sent him to study under a guy named Sacco Berkovich, who changed his first name to honor Sacco and Vanzetti, some more Italian communist anarchists. And Sacco and Berkovich, everything the guy did, and you can see it in the attitudes of Pete Buttigieg, and you can see it in what he has to say. Everything that Sacco and Berkovich did was to reinterpret and recast American history in terms of, well, the Puritans did this and Puritans did that. And you can hear that echoes of that out of academia still. Everything was to criticize Christianity. It was everything that was wrong with society was because of Christianity, even the Vietnam War even. And so that's where this is all coming from. That is the strain that is there. But there's another strain that is there. When we look at whose values are going to be taught, what religion is going to be taught, what are we going to teach people about American history and the bigger issues about that go back to our worldview and our cultural values. Well, it's kind of interesting to think about where we get our textbooks now, the companies behind these textbooks.
Every single textbook we got as a kid came from a Mossad agent. By the way, McGraw-Hill, you know who started that? Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. Robert Maxwell owns, every single textbook we got as a kid came from a Mossad agent.
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
Not my Texas history book. not all 11 of them.
Okay, who is McGraw-Hill? They made all the textbooks, right? You ever look at your textbook?
When you were a little kid, it was made by McGraw-Hill.
Oh, that's the publisher.
That's the publisher.
Oh my God. That was apparently founded by Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend's dad.
This is how evil the Epsteins were. Not only were they kids, they were also giving them homework.
Yes.
It's like, damn, bro.
That's messed up.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they come after the kids in every single way.
Yeah, you know, right?
Carry these around your
body, mind, and soul.
Cover the book yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You had to give it its own yarmulke.
Oh my God, dude. We did. That was the thing. We had to cover our own book.
You get the idea, right? I'm going to keep it clean here. Anyway, that's where it comes from, McGraw-Hill. And you can certainly see that in the textbooks. We went out of our way to try to avoid textbooks. I hated the textbooks when I was in school. They were dumbed down and wrong about everything. Go to original sources. It really was an eye-opener for me. I mean, as a kid, I wasn't reading original sources. I was reading the textbooks. Later on, when I got to the original sources, it's like, wow, this is completely different than what they lied to us about in the textbooks. So go to the original sources, read what the people who lived at the time of the American Revolution or the Civil War had to say about what was happening with society. Don't go with this carefully curated indoctrination. That's a big part of thinking critically. Think about your sources. And so do you want the McGraw-Hill textbooks from a company that was founded by Ghislaine Maxwell's father?
Nothing to see here. No reason to be suspicious.
Well, here's another suspicious thing. The CDC just paid Pfizer $1.2 billion to buy more of the Trump GCI, the genetic code injection, the mRNA shots. And this is just for 2 years, for 2026 and for 2027. They're going to go through $1.2 billion worth of this stuff. Now, let's put this in perspective. I have complained about the Genesis Act, which Trump did. And of course, I think it's very appropriate when you look at the major sea changes in civilization in the world and humanity throughout Genesis, from the fall to the flood to the Tower of Babel. You can see all that stuff being repeated in what's happening with the technocracy. And at the heart of that is artificial intelligence. That's our new tree of knowledge, right? That's going to allow us to become like gods and live forever, right? Or at least some of them are going to get that. Now, Trump said we're going to have a Manhattan Project as part of this Genesis Act. And we're going to fund it like the Manhattan Project, creating the nuclear bomb, the atomic bomb. $1.2 billion. You go back and look at the Manhattan Project. That wasn't $1.2 billion. That was $2 billion. And that was in $1940. Today, that would be equivalent to $30 to $36 billion because the dollar has rapidly lost its value. That's another reason why I say get your money out of fiat currency and get it into gold and silver. I mean, what we were talking about earlier, a $64 grocery bag at Target now is $158, I think is what it was. Just massive inflation. And that's just been in the last 6 years. If you want to protect the purchasing power of what you have earned, you need to get it in gold and silver. Again, Tony Arterburn at Wise Wolf can help you to gradually do that. That's a great service that he offers with Wolf Pack. And you can go through davidknight.gold. Will take you to Tony Arterburn's site. But again, when you look at it, going back to the $1.2 billion that he wants to give for AI, and again, that's his big initiative, right? Artificial intelligence, and it also included money for research into quantum computing and all the rest of this. That big Manhattan Project research thing that Trump wanted to do, $1.2 billion, and yet the CDC spent the same amount just to get more mRNA poison into people. Think about that. It truly is amazing how they have prioritized killing us. And that's really what this is. We're looking at the lethality. This is an article from Brian Shilhavi at Health Impact News. He said, I reported for years, long before COVID, that CDC is owned by pharmaceutical companies who produce vaccines, specifically Pfizer. They are the biggest seller of vaccines. Of course, it is this private, quasi-government entity that is there. They make, and again, they wear military uniforms. I mean, this thing needs to be ended. If RFK Jr. was going to keep the faith, that'd be the first thing you get rid of is the Center for Disease Control. The largest purchaser of vaccines in the United States and the largest seller of them. So CDC has just awarded Pfizer $1.2 billion to get more COVID vaccines, so-called. I call them the genetic code injections because they use mRNA and because of the horrific effects that they have on people. Just for this year and for next year, just for 2 years, $600 million a year worth of these poison that they're putting out there. CDC has awarded that just to Pfizer alone, right? And this is for adult as well as for pediatric mRNA injections. Now, the kids never get COVID, they were saying, right? We saw that throughout the fantasy thing. Because what they would do is they would look at older adults who have other issues. They'd misdiagnose this deliberately as COVID. Why? Because Trump is paying them to do that. You point at somebody and say they got COVID, and we will give you $13,000, and then we will give you a 20% bonus on everything you do to them in the hospital until you kill them. And so they were paid to do that, to imagine that it was COVID. More money is allocated, however, for pediatric COVID shots than for adult COVID shots. They really want to get the kids. I mean, look at this pedophile network of Zionists and Mossad and Trump. They want to poison the kids. They want to rape the kids. They want to mess with their minds, and they want to inject them with poison. What a heinous, satanic group Trump and his pals are. It truly is amazing. And it goes well beyond just the sexual stuff. They come after every aspect of children. They really do hate them. Don't say that Trump is defending kids. Don't say that he's defending life. I mean, you could shut down every abortion clinic, but if you're going to start wars around the world, you're not pro-life. Wayne Road, author of the book, The Vaccine Court, reported yesterday the vaccine court just crossed a major milestone, July 1st of this year, for petitions filed for vaccine injuries and deaths. And of course, this is not even the COVID stuff. The COVID stuff gets reported in a separate area because they had the PrEP Act that George W. Bush shepherded in 2005, to make sure you get no compensation if you're injured by these GCI Trump shots. This is because of things like the routine flu shots that this is ramping up. The annual flu shot, something that has been reported for years that was the most dangerous thing in terms of adverse effects that people got. There have been 28,000 injury petitions filed and 1,461 death petitions filed. And again, this is not even counting Trump's genetic code injection, the mRNA. So it is another Maha betrayal, says Children's Health Defense, and good for them. They're not cutting any slack. I mean, they were founded by and run by at the top RFK Jr. RFK Jr., however, has betrayed the work that they started there, and they're not cutting him any slack. They criticize what he does there. They call this a Maha betrayal. Trump's nominee for the CDC director has called mRNA technology safe and effective. And why wouldn't she? The CDC, where she's going to be director, is going to be one of the main vaccine seller of everything. And the Trump administration is going to give them, just to Pfizer, $1.2 billion. And they put in as CDC director this woman.
I do believe that mRNA...
You're all welcome over afterwards, yeah.
I do believe that mRNA technology is safe and effective.
Liar.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You couldn't possibly say that truthfully. with a straight face, look on your face. Yeah, she's laughing when she says that. I guess we should be able to laugh about it, but we're not. That's Dr. Erica Schwartz. I do believe mRNA technology is safe and effective. She is like the cowardly lion from Oz. I do believe in jabs. Except she's the cowardly liar. Here's the scientifically accurate answer, says Children's Health Defense. First, you'd have to say, well, we don't know the full safety profile because we haven't tested it. It's all too new, and we're not even collecting data on it. So that's the real answer. We don't want to believe that it is safe. That's not, don't talk about, and of course, RFK Jr. said, well, my purpose here is to restore faith in the institutions. Have no faith in any of these institutions, not in any man either. Don't have faith in it because it's RFK Jr. Because as we see with RFK Jr., they can turn on a dime. They can be seduced by power and position, as apparently he has. And so they went through in this article talking about so many things that have been given a green light by the FDA, because if you pay the FDA, you are free to do anything. That's what it stands for. And if you don't pay the regulators at the FDA or Trump above them, you're forbidden to do anything, right? So the people who wanted the natural products because they don't pay off the FDA, they're forbidden. But the pharmaceutical companies are free to do whatever they want. And so they went through a long list. This is a very long article talking about things like Viagra, the blindness, and the hearing loss that they have seen over and over again, and yet they ignore it. Statins, which are probably one of the most commonly prescribed things. I've gotten a lecture about statins from my former doctor because after the second lecture, it's like, that's it. I'm not coming back to here anymore. Oh, we have this Framingham study, and it's like, you've got one study that was done 60 years ago, and that's the basis of it? Have you gone back to study why people are getting sometimes fatal muscle pain or weakness, or why other people are getting memory loss, confusion, brain fog from statins? Have you gone back and studied that? Well, no, we don't know anything about that. Or you look at drugs like Resolin, which is just taken off in the year 2000 after the FDA tied it to 63 deaths. But of course, that was 26 years ago. We don't get rid of drugs today just because some people are dying. What an antiquated idea that is. 63 deaths? We had more than that in the first couple of months of the mRNA shot that was out there. Resolin was something that was put out for type 2 diabetes. It gave people severe liver failure. And then, of course, we have the COVID-19 vaccines, and we all know about the myocarditis, the pericarditis, the heart issues that are out there, especially for kids. You know, we used to never have to have kids who are going to participate in sports have to have an EKG to see if their heart could take it. But we started having them die suddenly for some reason. I can't understand why that would all of a sudden start to happen. Never happened before. But yeah, let's spend billions of dollars to give more of these to more kids, because they didn't get their shot back in 2020. And even now eye issues are showing up with COVID-19 vaccines. People are getting eye inflammation, retinal problems, and they're looking at the possible link for that. But don't use ivermectin. That's for horses, y'all. Then we have the SSRIs, and even in this article from Children's Health Defense, they don't talk about the murder-suicide pills as murder-suicide pills and what they do to people, especially when they try to get off of them, because they're having some of these other issues. Kim Witzik, her husband, committed suicide. He said it felt like his body was on fire. He couldn't handle it. And so he'd complained about that. She goes on a business trip. She comes back and she finds that he's committed suicide. Apparently, he got off of them all at once because of the adverse effects that he was having. Some people are getting persistent sexual dysfunction from these things. That'd be one reason to stop taking this stuff. Then they mentioned the fluoroquinolones, which got Lance for a while. Praise God that he was able to get over this, but it was horrific. And we started looking at all the people who had been damaged by these fluoroquinolones. It was permanent in most cases. In his case, it was severe. I mean, he couldn't even operate a mouse without intense pain. Peripheral neuropathy. And so who would have guessed that antibiotics would cause tendon rupture or nerve damage? And he still has to be very careful about that type of thing. If he does something really strenuous, he can still feel it in his tendons. So there has been some permanent damage with that. Eventually, they put a black box warning on it. However, as we talked about it when it happened to him, nobody reads those to you. Supposedly, the physician is supposed to tell you. Supposedly, the pharmacist is supposed to tell you. Neither of them said anything about that. As a matter of fact, when I complained about that, and we had some friends who we've known for a very long time, and we were talking about what had happened, and I said, it's got a black box label, and nobody told us about it. And in the Bible study group that she's in, there's a physician, and she mentioned it. She said, have you ever heard of this? And she goes, oh, there's no black box label for those. She didn't know, right? They don't tell you because they don't know. They don't know because they don't care. And so our friend really stressed that. She says, no, it's a black box label. And so then the physician, then at that point, went back and looked at it. She came back, she said, I got to apologize. You're right. It is a black box label. I didn't know that. Yeah, you see, they don't do anything. It's like when you have a major newspaper has a severe misstatement or something. Usually they do the correction. They might attack somebody on page 1. They might do a correction 2 days later and put it on page 26 of the newspaper, right? And that's basically what they do with the black box labels. They put it out there to cover the CDC. They put it out there to cover the drug manufacturers, but they don't do it to help the patients, and they don't inform the pharmacists or the physicians. They have to go seek this out themselves. And guess what? Most of them don't care to look. What about when a cancer treatment like tamoxifen for breast cancer, what about when that gives you uterine cancer? Yeah, that's the kind of thing that we see all the time from the drug people. Well, we were talking earlier about Ghislaine Maxwell, which reminds me of this guy who wants to be the permanent AG. He's now the acting attorney general. Todd Blanche, the guy who famously visited Ghislaine Maxwell, spent a great deal of time with her in an interview, and then she got transferred to a federal prison camp, a minimum security facility that is not commonly used to house inmates committed the crimes like she's been convicted of. And so you have the cover-up is continuing, and Trump wants to reward this guy with being the Attorney General because Pam Bondi did such a great job of covering things up. But when we look at what he has done, this is a Democrat congresswoman. And of course, the Democrats will tell you what Trump has done. They will hide what they've done. They'll criticize the other side, and the Republicans will do the same thing. Her name is Teresa Fernandez. She's talking about the Epstein files, the fact that Trump is mentioned 1,500 times that we know of, even in the redaction.
Appear 1,500 times in just Epstein's emails, including in reference to the rape of a young girl, would lead to the House and Senate hearings of the president and condemnation from every Republican elected official. Republicans forced Nixon to resign over much less. But that was back when Republicans' values and principles allowed them to challenge their president.
Yeah, we know how that works. And of course, it was during the Trump administration where they covered up the New Mexico ranch. They shut down the local state investigation. The state was outraged about that. The state of New Mexico began another investigation into that ranch that Epstein had. And now we have the Trump administration. The Department of Justice, presumably, is now obstructing a New Mexico investigation into the sex trafficking that happened at Epstein's private ranch, the Zorro Ranch. Yeah, it doesn't change. And that's not even the beef that Reason has with Todd Blanche. We'll talk about that when we come back. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Welcome back. And we got several comments here. LT Oracle of Truth says, I live near St. Augustine. Our area has been marching daily in protest of ICE since that man was run over. Well, they should be protesting. We need to understand that the police need to be held to a higher standard because of the monopoly of force that they're given and the overwhelming ability to use that force. So they need to be held to a higher standard. In reality, they're not being held to any standard at all. It's like, you get my policy done, and I don't care how you get it done. That should never be the case. We need to make sure that we first have law enforcement officers that are going to obey the law, that are going to respect us as human beings. I don't talk about human rights, respecting human rights, because that's just become kind of a leftist catchphrase, unfortunately. But we are talking about human rights. And if you're going to teach people that they can brutalize and abuse anyone that they want, and that they can go around and do this en masse, they can threaten people when people are taking pictures of them out in public. This is the antithesis of what it ought to be. I mean, I saw what good policing looked like when we visited the UK in the 1980s. It's not like that anymore. I mean, they have internalized the worst aspects of police everywhere now, especially in America. But they didn't carry guns. They would walk in pairs, for their own safety. They were very polite, and they would protect free speech. When we were there, they had Speaker's Corner. I can't even imagine that still exists anymore. But Speaker's Corner was a tradition, and every Sunday morning, people could go to this one area of Hyde Park, and they could take something to stand on. Literal, I guess is where we get the idea of a soapbox. And so they could stand on something, just start talking about a subject, and typically it was about religion or politics. And there'd be some very, very heated debates. So people started to get upset. The bobbies would come around and kind of quietly establish a presence there. They would talk on their radios, and if it was getting really heated, they'd have more people come by. And it was getting that way back in the early 80s when we went. The Muslims did not like the Christians they would heckle them and did not want to have a debate. And so, it was getting kind of hot. And when I took the kids back in 2001, it was the other way around. The police were arresting the Christians on behalf of the Muslims. And they're also carrying guns and intimidating people. But the way that it ought to be handled is to make sure that we have policies that are going to be enforced, but we're not going to chase people down. We're not going to jump in front of their cars and put their life in danger and then shoot these people through the windshields. It's insane. If they're going to do that to other people who, okay, let's say they're breaking the law here, coming across the border, are you going to let them get to the point where if they say you're breaking the law because you're speeding, they get to shoot you on sight? They can make the argument, they have in many cases. Speed kills, right? So if speed kills, can a federal agent kill you for speeding?
Reminds me of that quote from Jeremy Clarkson. Speed's never killed anybody. It's the sudden stop that gets you.
Yeah, that's right. Good quote from him. Hi Booth says, Robert Maxwell entered into a joint venture with McGraw-Hill in 1989, but the company became sole owner of that venture in 1993. Yeah, well, there you go. That's where a lot of this insanity is being pushed. Trump made the outlandish, baseless claim that the illegal disclosure of his tax returns by an IRS contractor had caused at least $10 billion in damages. Blanche, appointed by Trump, approved a settlement that would shield the Trumps from any liability of tax violations and created a $1.776 billion, quote, anti-weaponization fund. It was denounced as a slush fund. Why did they do that? Well, because Trump was going to control the board that was going to allocate the stuff, and he could put people on the board or remove them at will. This is in-your-face corruption. And this, not what Todd Blanche did with Ghislaine Maxwell. Again, Todd Blanche, Trump's personal lawyer, is going to try to do a sweetheart deal with Ghislaine Maxwell. What would that be about? His Department of Justice, when in his first term, shut down the New Mexico investigations in the Epstein Ranch. They're doing it again now. His name is in the documents 1,500 times. Oh, there's nothing to see here, right? You got people like Maria Bartiromo who can't believe that Trump would lie to us about casualties and the capabilities of Iran. but he is lying. You can clearly see that he's lying in all these different issues. But the thing that really got Reason upset was what Todd Blanche did with this. And anybody who is a lawyer, that's going to be the first thing they look at. And it was the first thing that Judge Napolitano said about this. He said, you can't have a lawsuit when there's no adversarial relationship here. This is Trump suing himself and paying himself off with the taxpayers' money. And that's exactly what the judge said. There were a lot of former judges, a lot of attorneys who contacted her and said, you got to do something about this. She said, yeah, this is a collusive lawsuit. And she said it needs to be brought up in his confirmation hearing. She sanctioned some of the lawyers that were involved in that. And what she was essentially calling for was for Congress, or the Senate, I should say, to confirm Blanche, calling for them to sanction him by not letting him be Attorney General. Jacob Sullivan's article at Reason was, by blessing corruption, Todd Blanche has disqualified himself from the job that he wants. Well, that's absolutely true. He's willing to subvert justice in the service of the president's grudges. And his participation in the IRS settlement shows that he's happy to bless a grossly unethical product of self-dealing. That is precisely what is happening with the Trump administration. And as this is all happening, you got a lot of people who are accusing him of this iceberg lettuce diarrhea thing that's happening. Of course, the company that was that was identified by the FDA, they said they did testing, and they said we found this particular bacteria or whatever in the shredded lettuce. And I don't know, again, when I look at this, I don't know if it was the shredding that happened in the manufacturing process or whether it's coming from the farm, but they have some farms that are in Mexico, some that are in America. And this particular company was identified by the FDA as a source of this, which has affected thousands of people just in one state. As a matter of fact, the government has underreported this. The federal government has underreported. They say only about 1,000 or so people, but state government in just Michigan alone reported over 6,000 people. And there's been 20 states where this has been a big issue. So as one person went back and looked at it, he said he found that there was regulations that were going to be used to try to identify the provenance of foods whenever something like this happens. Now, I don't know the details of that regulation. It might have been something that was not just in the public interest of safety, but it might have been something that was really burdensome in terms of regulation. I don't know. But nevertheless, this particular company that was identified as that gave $1 million to the Trump PAC. And they did it 6 days before that legislation was stopped. Now we come to a situation where the FDA says that contamination came from your lettuce, and then they reversed themselves a couple of days later and said, oh, never mind. We just made a mistake with that. I'm sure there's nothing to see. I'm sure there's nothing at all to see. This is not a pattern of corruption with Trump. Not at all. Not at all. Well, we're going to take a look here at the World Cup, because I think it's kind of interesting what happened. So remember, we had a couple of weeks ago, Trump went to a NATO meeting, and he just went off on Spain. And just as another example of how he rules as a petulant dictator, as a king, as a Caesar, he just got himself all worked up as he was speaking at NATO about how he didn't like the fact that Spain would not come to his rescue in his Iran quagmire. And so he made statements like saying, Spain is a terrible partner. They are a wasted cause. And then he had Scott Bessent there on the podium with him. And he turns to Bessent and he says, I want you to cut off all trade with Spain. You know, just like that, like some kind of a king or something. The mad king. And I'm not talking about, well, he is crazy, but he's also angry. He fits both of those definitions of being a mad king. He said, I want you to cut off all trade with Spain, including visits. Well, guess what? The USA has a large trade surplus with Spain. Is there anything that Trump is doing that is in our interest? No, it's all about his ego politics, not geopolitics. It's all about his egonomics. It's not about economics. This is not about helping America in any way, shape, or form. This is about going after one country at a time because he doesn't like something the leader did. Somebody in Canada does something he doesn't like, I'll put 50% tariffs on that. Or somebody in Spain doesn't come to his rescue in his quagmire war. He wants to kick them out of NATO. He wants to punish them, cut off all trade. And so this was the backdrop, again, of what happened with the final World Cup game, which if you're like me, you just have to just realize who won. It was Spain versus Argentina. And he goes there and Spain wins. And so he's, as one of the hosts of this, one of the key hosts of this event this time, he presents the trophy, especially because he has got this, the guy who is the FIFA president, he's got him on a tight leash. FIFA created a peace prize for Trump. Like he got the football peace prize, and it's their first inaugural one. They'd never given it to anybody else, but Infantino created this and basically groveled before Trump as they were talking. People were giggling behind his back about this. I said, well, really, he's more of a gigolo than anything else. I think Mike Johnson is as well. We should call Mike Johnson the gigolo of the House, not the Speaker of the House. He never wants to talk about anything. He always claims that he doesn't know anything about that subject whenever somebody asks him a question about anything. So he's not a speaker. He's just a gigolo.
I'm really curious. Is there some big grant FIFA is about to get? Are they about to start installing giant soccer stadiums everywhere?
Well, I don't know.
Are they looking at the football? Are they looking at the football stadium money and being like, we got to get some of that?
Yeah, they made a lot of money off of this World Cup. They always do. And the tickets were astronomically expensive, more expensive than a Super Bowl ticket. So anyway, he tried to use his influence, as we all remember, when you had the key American player, who's really not American. He was an anchor baby. But
that's the thing. When you look at all these teams, all of these guys are from random countries, and they just get it. You know, they pick a team, and you know, when they go to the World Cup, they're always on that team from then on. It's just
that's right. Everybody buys into it, right? It's this group mentality. Yeah, everybody buys into it.
Yeah, it's like back in the day, the Chicago Cubs used to be made up of guys from Chicago. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how you can be from Chicago and get excited that this sports team made up of guys from not just around the country, but potentially around the world are winning a game. Who cares? Yeah. You don't know that guy. He doesn't care about Chicago. He cares that he's making millions upon millions of dollars to play a child's game.
Well, they do get involved in it. They do get ownership of it. And it's always, we did this and we did that, even though they're just spectators. And so as he got this guy that was ejected from the game, as he got him reinstated because he called up the gigolo on the phone, the FIFA president, and they reinstated him. Belgium, the next team that they were playing, had all the rest of the soccer teams were very angry at the FIFA president as well as Trump. And so the Belgium team went out of their way to humiliate the USA team. They beat them 4-1, which is huge in soccer. Typically, you only have 1 or 2 goals scored, if that. They beat him 4-1, and he made a point about the humiliation by withholding his top 3 players. And so then you have a situation where Spain, that Trump is just trashing 2 weeks ago, wins the World Cup, and Trump has to present it to them. Well, he was booed as he presented the World Cup. As he came in, he was booed. He was booed again when he presented it. He declared the U.S. had officially become a, quote, soccer country during the tournament. Again, that's about as tone deaf as you can get. I've known a lot of people from Europe and the U.K. They never call it soccer. That is an American thing. You call it soccer. That means that you don't know or care anything about their sport, which they call football, because they play it with their feet. We call our American sport of football, but it's not the same thing at all. So he photobombs the presentation. He's always got to be on the podium, and this tells us something that is very important about his personality. It's something that Wilbur Ross, when he was working for the Rothschilds, noticed, and he talked about it. He said, you know, the casinos that Trump had, they were going bankrupt. The Rothschilds owned some of those notes, and they sent Wilbur Ross around. He said he got there, and there's this huge crowd of people, and Trump is holding court, and he's watching him. He said he got on the phone with the Rothschilds. He said, this is somebody we could use. And he's being used ever since then. They just appeal to his vanity, to his wanting to be out front and being on the podium. And so, of course, that's what he was doing. He was at the World Cup. And let me see if I can find this thing that we've got here. Where is that clip? Here it is. We've got it right here. Here he is photobombing the World Cup. Watch this. And watch what the guy who's in a suit wearing sneakers is the guy who's the president of FIFA. And he wants to get Trump off the stage. And so he runs across there and he tries to, come on. He even takes him by the arm and kind of tries to pull him. Trump's not budging. He's going to stay there in front. And he's going to do his little happy dance that he does as well. Look at this. There he is running across there. Come on. Time for you to move.
The champions of the world are Spain.
Is now, so they can edit him out of that.
That's Australian commentator. They're talking about that in the booth. They go, yeah, he's standing there in front of him. And, that's okay. They can edit him out of that. And they did. They edited him out of the headline was they photoshopped him out. Nobody uses Photoshop anymore, I don't guess, to do something like that. It works so much easier with AI because it can fill in the background for you once you remove somebody out.
Photoshop actually has a built-in AI feature to do that sort of thing now.
Oh, does it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't used Photoshop for a long time. But yeah, the ego has landed. And he's there soaking up all the glory of the country that is so excited about this. And so he's going to go there and photobomb them because he wants to be on stage. It wasn't about getting even with anything. But what is interesting, I think, is how much it costs to go to these events. You go to Super Bowl that they had in 2024. The cost for that was $9,411 per ticket. You know how much it costs to go to the World Cup? $11,327 for a ticket. Think about that. That's absolutely insane. And again, people go to cheer for their country, even though the people that are on the team aren't necessarily from the country. Price gouging in some cities, as a matter of fact, backfired with some rates of 500% above average. So some of the hotels increased their costs by a factor of 5. Costs caused some of them to slash prices, and the Hotel Association of New York City had cut in half its revenue expectations from $200 million to $100 million. Yeah, people made a lot of money off of this because there is a tremendous fanaticism. That's where the term fan comes from. Tremendous fanaticism about this. Well, let's take a look at another fanaticism that is happening. They're fanning the wars that are going on behalf of Israel. The Pentagon, as I said, I don't believe these figures. I didn't believe them either for a long time. The New York Times has come out saying, well, the Pentagon has not disclosed dozens of injuries to U.S. military members in Iran. Even before the deadly strikes on Friday that happened in Jordan, where they reported 2 people killed, and then eventually that went up to 4, and a dozen or more injured. There had been 3 separate attacks prior to that, and those attacks were not even reported, let alone the casualties from the attacks. And when you look at the massive destruction, some of the pictures online, as you look at the number of missiles coming in, how fast they were coming in, people question, is that a hypersonic missile? Well, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to verify that. But it certainly was coming in fast. There appeared to be no effective defense against it either.
See, what they need is somebody standing out there with a radar gun tracking it so you could get an accurate read on it.
Don't think that would work. They can't track it with a regular radar, let alone with this. There's 2 issues with that. Number one, Iran went for the main, and it was like $1 billion antenna installation that was kind of the eyes of the whole system over multiple countries. They blinded that like the Cyclops in Odyssey, right from the very beginning. And then after that, they also have other missiles that aren't even hypersonic, but they change their speed mid-flight, which throws the whole system off. I mean, the whole thing is designed around calculating the trajectory of a missile that they presume is going to be traveling at a steady state speed. So they can look at the trajectory and project where it's going to happen, and they use that to take these things down. When you change the speed of the missile mid-flight, that throws that all off. Multiple U.S. officials anonymously told the New York Times that these incidents were never publicly acknowledged by the Pentagon. And of course, how could this be happening? Just like we saw with Maria Bartiromo, she's like scratching her head. How in the world could this be? We were told, and still Trump is telling us that they took out all these things. So how could these people be dying? How could there be destruction on these military bases? How could they have attacked not just Jordan, but 3 other countries, plus Saudi Arabia over the weekend? Oh, don't really know. We have the people in Kuwait, as a matter of fact. They are trying to evacuate in massive numbers. There's a picture of the people queued up trying to get out of Kuwait because it was one of the countries that was targeted. And of course, they took out their desalination plant. I don't know if they took it out completely, but they have lost half of their water supply as well as a lot of their power. So these people are saying, hey, we're vulnerable. We can't be defended by the United States or by our own government, so we got to get out of here. But Glenn Greenwald put up that video of all the people queuing up to try to get out of the country and says, don't worry, Iran doesn't have anything, right? As a matter of fact, we've heard this from Maria Bartiromo as well as Trump and Pete Hegseth. So Pete Hegseth lied about the casualties that are there, obviously. Pentagon withheld dozens of U.S. military injuries in Iran war. That's the New York Times headline. Pentagon said on Monday that U.S. casualties from Iranian attacks since July 7th had risen to nearly 100. I bet it's a lot more than that. Who audits the Pentagon on anything? They don't get audited on money. They don't get audited on casualties either. The Pentagon did not disclose the earlier strikes nor the casualties and the damage that they inflicted on social media. Its chief spokesman said on Monday the number of U.S. military casualties had risen to nearly 100. And it is vital for them to control this because you got to understand the game that they're playing, the game that Hegseth is doing, is the same old game they played in Vietnam. You keep score by comparing body bags and bombing runs, right? How many bombing runs did we make? How many people on our side got killed versus the other side? Oh, okay, that means that we're winning. Except we lost those wars. And Trump apparently doesn't realize that we lost those wars. He's resorting to whataboutism. This is a headline from RT. Yeah, it really is whataboutism. When people said, hey, why are we in this war where U.S. soldiers are getting killed? What are we spilling blood for? Even American blood, right? We don't care how many schoolgirls we kill in Iran, but hey, if we kill some U.S. military troops, now we care. And we should care. We should care. Their lives are not expendable. They should be treasured. They should be kept in reserve only to defend life and the Constitution. But that's not the way this government operates. And so Trump deflects by saying, well, look at the death tolls that happened in Vietnam and Afghanistan. Hey, dummy, we lost those wars as well. And you played that same game of how many bombing runs and how many body bags. And so on your score sheet, we should have won, except we didn't. So what are we fighting for, right? 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam, right? Or whatever Israel tells us. Well, what are we fighting for? Well, here's a good example of what we're fighting for. Israel has approved a new law.
Really tragic to see the oldest Christian community in the world erased before our very eyes. Israel has approved a new settlement called Shtema, where they will destroy 11,000 predominantly Christian homes to make way for settlers. This would effectively be the end of the Christian community in the in Bethlehem and in the Shepherd's Field.
As a matter of fact, you had Ro Khanna when he went to Israel, and of course he was attacked. He was stopped by the settlers that were there.
American politician has been detained by the IDF and Israeli settlers. I mean, we were at a village that Israeli settlers had destroyed. They had destroyed the school. They had destroyed that village, and we were just looking at it. And these hoodlums come in with machine guns, an M4, an American-made machine gun, and they detain us. They block off the road. And then they call the IDF, and the IDF is on their side, not on the side of the Americans. Being in the West Bank and in Israel is the first time that I have really been acutely aware of being brown. I feel
here he is as a Democrat. He's going to play the race card. But the bottom line, what he's talking about there, in terms of purging people out, what you see the settlers doing is absolutely amazing. What they're doing in Gaza and Palestine and Lebanon and other places, they're literally doing armed robbery with a gun, armed robbery of a farm. Here's an example of this. Look at this. This is an Israeli, quote-unquote, settler who pulls a pistol on this family who has been there for generations with their farm. And he says, get off this land and don't come back or I'll kill you. Yeah, this is what it's all about, folks. This, in a microcosm, is the Netanyahu government. It's force and murder and land theft, and they don't care who they kill. They just want the land. So while Ro Khanna was there, he also talked to some Christian mayors who were in the area. You heard that other clip there. They're saying they're going to end the Christian communities that have been there since the time of the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is the way they're going to do it. They come after the water.
Mr. Congressman. It's really the first time congressman that comes to Beit Sahur and Bethlehem area.
I am the mayor of Bethlehem, the city where Jesus Christ was born. My family name is Hananiah. We are mentioned in the Bible several times, and we are proud that we are deep-rooted in this land. And all the time, we are trying our best to survive in the Holy Land. I can give you like a simple example. Water, we should, according to World Health Organization, to receive 150 liters per capita per day. But unfortunately, we are receiving less than 50.
And how much are the settlers getting?
They are getting more than 400 liters per capita per day.
Outrageous. A lot of people come to the mayor office, tell them, please, I want to wash my clothes. I want to have a shower, a weekly shower.
And you can't control your own ground nor your own air.
Yeah.
And you're surrounded by 25 illegal settlements in a town where your family goes back before Jesus Christ was born.
Yes.
80% of the land of Beit Jala was taken. We are living in 20% of land.
Under the Oslo Accords, this should have all been part of a Palestinian state.
Yeah. Also, we can't travel all the borders and the the gates. So even to go to pray for the mosque or the church, we need a permission.
You cannot go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre where Jesus was crucified.
No.
We need a special
special.
Even as a mayor.
Even as a mayor, yeah.
When my father was in critical conditions at the hospital in Bethlehem, I wanted to transfer him to a hospital in Jerusalem. It has to be coordinated by a local ambulance to take him to the Israeli checkpoint. Imagine you're in critical conditions at the Israeli checkpoint and lose all that time. But this is still happening until today. Inhuman occupation.
If after my trip, more American members of Congress and senators started to come, because I'm hoping I'm not just going to be one. What will your message be to them of what should change?
Me, as the mayor of Bethlehem, and on behalf of my colleagues, we are officially invite them to come and live our situation. And after that,
take a look
we
at
have
what
just
you're really
only
supporting.
one sentence.
This is
Be
what Zionism is really
for
about.
the reality.
Folks, will be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Hello, it's me, Volodymyr Zelensky. I'm so tired of wearing these same t-shirts everywhere for years. You'd think with all the billions I've skimmed off America, I could dress better. And I could, if only David Knight would send me one of his beautiful gray MacGuffin hoodies or a new black t-shirt with the MacGuffin logo in blue. But he told me to get lost. Maybe one of you American suckers can buy me some at thedavidknightshow.com. You should be able to buy me several hundred Those amazing sand-colored microphone hoodies are so beautiful. I'd wear something other than green military cosplay to my various galas and social events. If you want to save on shipping, just put it in the next package of bombs and missiles coming from the USA.
And of course, you can go to davidknight.news and you can find where you can get those MacGuffin t-shirts and other things. And of course, it's never about what they say it's about. There's always some MacGuffin they throw out there to get you chasing their agenda. And we don't have anything that verifies that you're not Zelensky, so don't worry about that. We won't collect any IDs there if you get any T-shirts or anything else like that. But let's get back to Zionism. You just saw what was happening. They're going to purge entire Christian communities. Look, this is not about the Arabs or the Muslims. It's about really what Zionism is truly about. And radical Zionism and the theft and murder and threats of murder that are behind Zionism to steal the land. And it's not just about the Jews. Of course, the Zionists want to close ranks and say, you criticize us, you're criticizing all Jews. That is not the case whatsoever. As a matter of fact, when you look at the Zionists, they are some of the most anti-Semitic people out there. They hate Jews who have lived there for a very long time. They hate the ultra-Orthodox Jews. There's an example of it. And of course, we've seen this so many times. These are government officials, police, soldiers, attacking the people who are protesting government policies. Yeah, don't you dare protest government policies. If you do that in Israel, you'll get the uniformed thugs after you. If you do it here in the United States, you'll get the people who are owned by the Zionist government back there to bring charges against you, to get you canceled, to get you purged, to lose your job, that type of thing. Well, American Jews also criticize what is going on in Israel. They don't want to be lumped in with these radical revisionist Zionists. They're really no different than the radical Islamic jihadis. They fit in they're two sides of the same coin. You have the Zionists and who want to steal the land, and then you got the other ones who just want to kill everybody and take it, not even try to negotiate or finagle it. And they're pretty much like the Islamic radicals that are out there. Norman Finkelstein is an American Jew who has criticized Israel significantly. This is what he has to say. He says it's a much bigger problem than just Benjamin Netanyahu.
The problem is not only that Netanyahu is a homicidal maniac, it's a nation of homicidal maniacs. I remember 1963 when China got the bomb. And there were many people in the U.S. administration who said we should nuke China now. And you know what Conricus said? He said, maybe we should have. You realize what lunatics, it's not Benny Morris, a typical liberal elite in Israel. He's been advocating using nuclear weapons on Iran for a decade. He says, if the U.S. does not support a war to unseat the Iranian regime, then Israel will have to do it on its own using unconventional weapons. This nation of lunatics, this nation of homicidal maniacs.
Yeah, and of course, Jonathan Pollard has gone on one show after the other. I played a couple of his appearances, demanding that, use nuclear weapons against Iran. First use an EMP, then use the actual nukes on them. And he said, we blackmailed the United States back in 1973 to give us more conventional weapons, and we threatened to nuke Egypt at that point in time. It's not just, we should have nuked China when we had the upper hand. This is their morality, if you could call it morality. This is their ethics. This is their worldview. Kill the other guy before he can defend himself, before he comes after you, that type of thing.
Do unto others before they do unto you.
That's right. And we have brought in those values into the American government. Folks, this merger of the U.S. military and U.S. intelligence happened a long, long time ago. They're just trying to give themselves legal cover. It's what I've said about the warrantless spying on Americans. They've been doing that since the middle of the 20th century. They came along with Pfizer that was supposed to stop it, but then they used Pfizer to get a search warrant on Mr. and Mrs. Verizon, which is like having no warrant at all if you're going to get a search warrant on massive numbers of people. Then they went even further. They came in with Section 702, which gave them legal cover to do whatever they wish without a warrant. This is the same thing that is happening with this merger of the U.S. military and U.S. Intelligence agencies with Israel. That's truly what it's about. And of course, it's not that we are just learning this. We've known about this for a very long time. It was just always forbidden to talk about it, right? Because if you talk about it, you get accused of being racist. Well, guess what? We've passed that point. That Zionist technique has really been overplayed. And so we don't really care what kind of invectives they throw at us. As a matter of fact, if you go back and you look at Barry Goldwater being interviewed by Pat Buchanan, and of course, this perhaps is one of the things that got them after Pat Buchanan. Remember, you had Mark Levin out there saying, well, we can get rid of Tucker Carlson. Don't say we can't get rid of him. We got rid of Pat Buchanan. Yeah. This is the guy who writes a book called Life, Liberty, and Levin, who makes his living by speaking. And he absolutely hates free speech and a free press. Absolutely hates it. It should be punished by government, according to Mark Levin. Don't listen to anything this guy says about the Constitution. He wants to overthrow the Constitution with a constitutional convention. And of course, he's going to bring in things that people would support. Hey, if we had a constitutional convention, we could balance the budget. No, you wouldn't. They would just ignore it, just like they ignore the rest of the Constitution. But here's a clip of Barry Goldwater talking to Pat Buchanan, who Mark Levin and the Zionists are so happy that they got Pat Buchanan canceled.
You see any big, great men in the Congress today?
Oh, there's
by
a
and
few.
large, it's a low-grade stock.
All they're interested in is getting reelected. When they hear a command from Israel, they jump. And as a result, we're losing friends.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Hold it a second, Tom. What do you mean when they hear a command from Israel, they jump?
Well, I think Israel probably has more effect on the Congress than any country in the world, and more effect probably than in some issues than America.
Well, Senator, that reminds me, that hasn't been mentioned in this campaign.
I know.
We've all watched, you've watched, Mr. Lance has watched, Pat, me, everybody has watched the Israeli soldiers beating up on Palestinians for the last 3 weeks. Is the Israeli dog, Israeli tail wagging the American dog?
Something's wagging the American dog. It might be the tail, it might be the leash. I don't know, but they've certainly run this place.
They got us on a leash for now, don't they?
The United States policy should be toward Israel in the wake of what's going on.
I think we ought to get real tough with them, withdraw all support, till they finally sit down.
Withdraw the $3 billion in aid?
Yes, if necessary. You have to remember that the PLO, in all the history of this world, have never had a piece of land that they could call their own.
Palestinian people.
That's right. Now,
the Israelis say if you give them the land to call their own, the PLO will arrive, they'll put up the PLO flag, and they'll try to liberate all of Palestine, which means the end of the Jewish state if you do that.
I don't believe that for 1 minute. I think the Jewish armed forces probably are stronger than any combination of countries in that part of the world.
Do you share this view, Bert?
Well, I think Senator Goldwater has put his finger right on an important point, that there has to be something done there in mutual recognition for mutual security, land for peace, whatever the conversation is.
Well, now the tail is wagging the dog so severely. And they've got us on a leash, as Barry Goldwater pointed out. You would not have a group, and remember, this is Buchanan on firing line, so they've got people who typically argue with each other over every issue. They all agreed that Israel was controlling America back in the early 1970s. What do you think? What would they say about what's happening today? As a matter of fact, what would George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, what would they say about what Israel is doing? Well, we know. We know exactly what they would say because they talked about entangling alliances. They talked about perpetual war. Speaking of which, we got War Pete out there saying on X, he said, these American service members' sacrifice only stiffens our resolve because he's a Zionist. So he's more than happy to sacrifice American soldiers on an altar to Israel, to slit their throats, so to speak. Marjorie Taylor Greene responded on X and said, sacrifice? What are you talking about? They didn't willingly sacrifice themselves. They were killed because of a war you, Trump, and this administration are waging on behalf of a foreign country, Israel. That's exactly what is happening. And good for her for calling that out. She went on to say that these troop casualties are fueling Hegseth's bloodlust. I think that's a good way to describe him, bloodlust. When I look at him and his bloodlust, how he gets all fired up about killing people, and then when that turns back around on our own soldiers, it gets him fired up as well. He just loves to see death. And I got to say, it is absolutely repulsive and repugnant to me to see somebody doing that, even if he didn't profess to be a Christian. It's even more repulsive and repugnant when he goes about literally tattooing Christian symbols all over himself. His Christianity, folks, is skin deep, if it's even that deep. This is what the Republicans have become, repulsive and repugnant. Then Trump wants to expand the war. He's always looking for where he can have a new war. You know, can we go to war with Greenland and Denmark? Can we go to war with Venezuela? Can we do Cuba? How about if we go across the border into Mexico and we take on the narco-terrorists? This is a Reason article, headline, Calling Cartels Narco-Terrorists Turns the Drug Enforcement into a War. Well, I think they may have they should have paid attention. That happened a long time ago. That happened in Venezuela. That was the justification for shooting unarmed boats that you hadn't even verified that they were running drugs. Even if they were running drugs, that's never been the U.S. protocol, not even under the unconstitutional, illegal UN war on drugs. You didn't shoot people and kill them. You didn't go on, stop the boats, go on board and verify that they've got some contraband and then line them up on the side of the ship and execute them. What they did it from the air. Oh, okay, we do it from the air, that's fine, right? We can bomb whoever we wish, and that doesn't count as murder. Except they also went around and circled back, and the people who were shipwrecked and struggling to survive in the water, they killed them in a follow-up. It is literally a war crime. It is literally murder because it's not even a legitimate war. Now they want to go to war with the drug gangs that have been created by the drug war. And where's that going to end up? Do you think these people who are more than willing to sell drugs, more than willing to get into human trafficking and all that that entails with women and children, do you think that they would have a problem for money being a surrogate army for Iran? And of course, they've already found drones that operate off of fiber optics cables. Why would they have that? Are they going to be used as a surrogate to attack America? I think that is clearly on one of the issues that are there. Meanwhile, you have one of, I think, the most clueless takes on all of this, perhaps even more clueless and more evil than Maria Bartiromo, who doesn't, well, wait a minute, this can't be happening. They can't be attacking our bases. Trump said they don't have any missiles left. He said that months ago, and he's still saying that. Well, here's WND, which has become really a Zionist rag in the most extreme. And of course, I interviewed several times Joseph Fair before he had a stroke and could no longer do verbal interviews. His wife has pretty much taken over the operation of WND, and he was always a rabid supporter of Israel, I think, due to a misplaced theology that he has. As a Seventh-day Adventist, he looks at Israel as the be-all and end-all. And it's gotten even worse there now. This is an article there, Avenge Those Americans. Watch the U.S. hammer Iran in the 8th night of strikes after American soldiers are killed in Jordan. Really? Avenge? Didn't we start the war? How do you see that as avenging? I don't see that at all. But the question is, as they present themselves as Christians, who are they really worshiping? They're really worshiping a foreign entity, political entity. That's really the object of their worship. That is what's happening with all of these Zionists. Meanwhile, Jordan has become the new flashpoint as the troop deaths are rising. There's only a limited amount of this they can cover up. As I said before, nobody audits the Pentagon for any financial stuff. If you do, you get a missile through the window like 9/11. But they certainly don't audit them for casualties. So they can lie about anything they wish. The White House is now even touting the popularity of Trump's deal with Iran, which he already declared to be over. I guess this really confuses Maria Bartiromo, right? This kind of capricious, flip-flopping liar that he is. On Monday, he boasted about the popularity of his peace deal with Iran, which he said is over. I'm not going to even talk to them. They're scum, he said. There's no point in talking to them anymore. And yet he's saying, do you see how popular my peace deal is? Trust in Trump. Voters overwhelmingly support the Iran peace deal. This was put out by the White House. And they put out a link to a poll. That was on July 20th. That was on Monday. According to the survey that they published, more than 60% of registered voters approve of the Memorandum of Understanding. And that's why Israel got Brad Parscale, who has his hooks into Salem Radio, the massive Christian radio network, as well as his hooks into the Charlie Kirk Show. That's why they're paying him $1.5 million to turn public opinion for war for Israel. Yet, as Trump is talking about how popular his Iran peace deal is, he had already declared that it's completely over. It's officially over. And we're going to ramp up this war. It's going to be total war, right? And then, so he says that, and then he touts his peace memorandum, which he never had any intention of following. And which, by the way, J.D. Vance, remember, J.D. Vance came out when people started looking at this. What is this about $300 billion to Iran? Oh, well, don't worry. That's going to be private companies. And it's like, yeah, we know how that works out. That's like the private companies that got on board for your ballroom at the White House. They pay some money into this, and then they get favors from the U.S. government and special favors out of that. J.D. Vance comes in and he says, well, all that money is going to be going through us. Any of the money that's released to them is going to be going through us. And we're going to make sure they have to buy food from American farmers. All of that was a lie. They were playing the farmers as they have played them from the very beginning. As Trump did the tariffs that hurt them so much in his first regime, and now he's doing it again with the tariffs, he's always promised the farmers that he's going to have relief for them at some point in time. He gave the relief to Javier Milei, his fellow Zionist in Argentina, gave him $20 billion, not a penny to American farmers. Then Argentina turns around and undercuts them by selling the products that they had been buying from Americans. He sells that to China. China changes suppliers. I said, man, we're going to get him more money. We're going to put together a private investment consortium to help Argentina, but nothing to help the farmers. So then they say, well, we're going to help the farmers. We're going to have this money that's going to Iran. They're going to buy from the American farmers. You don't realize that's in the deal because it wasn't in the deal. It was never in the deal. He just completely made that up. That's J.D. Vance lying to your face. They all lie to your face. Everyone in this Trump regime lies to your face. The bottom line is the U.S. doesn't have enough missiles to return to an all-out war with Iran, says the UK Telegraph. Yeah, the power that they have is an imagined power. We've got a fiat currency and we got a fiat military. We just declare that we're powerful. We don't actually have to have the missiles. So according to Trump, we've got all the missiles in the world and Iran doesn't have any, except look at what is actually happening. Just the other way around. A U.S. official familiar with the administration discussions said the operation will be limited by dwindling stockpiles of air defense and long-range munitions. We don't have enough to safely sustain operations. I don't think the White House is aware of that, he said. Do you think they would care? Who's he going to believe? Is he going to believe the people in his own military, or is he going to believe Benjamin Netanyahu and the Mossad agent, the Mossad head, who gave him the briefing to start this war? That's who he's going to believe. Rubio said the U.S. is willing to negotiate. Well, there you go. I mean, we were negotiating with Iran when we did a sneak attack with the Israelis on them. We were negotiating with them when Trump threatened to kill the negotiators. Remember that? And before that, before Trump publicly threatened to kill the negotiators, it was Privately, you had the Pakistani mediators who were there warned the Iranians to get out of town because they were going to be killed. Whether it's by Trump or by Israel, it doesn't really matter. They've adopted the same tactics, and they have both abandoned any ethics or morality. Meanwhile, as the war expands, the Houthis are declaring that there may be a maritime embargo against Saudi Arabia, which again would affect the oil markets even more. This is yet another choke point, another dire strait that connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and global markets. Saudi Arabia has redirected a lot of their oil supplies to that area to be able to export them without having to go through the Hormuz Strait. Saudis have diverted millions of barrels of oil per day through a pipeline to an export terminal at the Red Sea. Those exports have acted as a crucial relief valve for global oil markets during the U.S.-Iran war. A closure of that strait would block in those barrels, exacerbating the disruption triggered by Iran's attacks on the tankers in Hormuz. Meanwhile, 2 more tankers in the Strait of Hormuz have exploded. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting the passive way they use this. It's like, instead of saying that a drunk migrant ran over somebody and killed them, they say, well, the truck did it, right? So here's a situation where the Iranians probably blew up these tankers, and they say, well, they just exploded. I don't know what happened. Don't know why. Exploded after they tried to enter and exit the strait through an, quote, unsafe route, which means that they're going to tell people which route they have to go through, and if you don't go through that route, you might have your tanker explode somehow. We don't really know how, but they said the tankers.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, that's right. They were.
I'll get Scooby-Doo in the gang.
Instigated and forced by those of the United States to enter the strait and to violate the designated routes through the crucial waterway, they said. Well, this article here is from James Ferguson. He says that Trump is slipping into an Iran quagmire. You think? You think? Yeah, as I did that AI cartoon at the very beginning of this, I depicted Trump as Brer Rabbit fighting with a tar baby. We knew how this was going to turn out, but of course we had people at the Daily Wire. What is that? That's the Daily Wire of money that they get from Israel. People like Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro. Oh, it's not a quagmire. It's not a quagmire. We're so powerful, we'll be finished with this in no time at all. Meanwhile, retired U.S. General Barry McCaffrey reckons that a ground war over Hormuz would require a force of 600,000 troops. Is that too much for Israel to ask? No, of course not. Just ask Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro. They'll tell you that's a small price for us to pay for their agenda of land theft. We're going to take a very quick break, folks, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
Analyzing the globalists' next move. And now, the David Knight Show.
Well, California is going to merge databases. We're seeing this everywhere, aren't we? What they talk about, no silos. We don't want to have some information over here by this bureaucracy, or this department, or this state, or this unit of government that isn't shared with all of them. Folks, that is something that we should be horrified at. The founders did not want consolidation. They did not want centralization. That's why they divided power between the states, the people, and the federal government. And then they divided the federal government into three hopefully competing entities who have now found a way to collude with each other or to just abdicate their authority to a bureaucracy. And so what we're seeing in California is a trend. It's happening everywhere. What's even more alarming is we look at the explosion of flock cameras. Take a look at this. This is how the number of flock cameras has rapidly gone up in just the last, it starts out in 2024. And then look at this, how it is rapidly metastasizing like a cancer. It is a surveillance state cancer that is consuming our country. And it's not just the flock cameras, it's also the data centers. And how are the data centers going up so quickly? Well, as we pointed out before, we reported this before, Aaron Brockovich famously got into a fight with a corporation over what was happening in her area. She is now back over these data centers. And what she found out is very amazing. She found out that it's really being run through secretly through non-disclosure agreements. That NDA, it's not just the NDAA, but it's also an NDA. Listen to this.
It's not one town and one aquifer and one data center. It's the entire country.
Wow.
We've talked about Louisiana from the Midwest. Mm-hmm. Now, the next thing that I noticed, because each one of these people in their submission, it wasn't this one town reporting the same thing. It's the whole country. They had no idea. They had no idea. They woke up to this construction. We weren't informed. City council didn't tell us anything. We're completely in the dark because these big tech groups came in and put these city council members under a non-disclosure.
Oh, is that what you're...
Correct. In every state. In every state. Every city, every town reporting to me. We knew nothing. Non-disclosure agreement.
And this is a hallmark of this techno-fascism. And it is a fascism. It is a merger of corporations with government. And the purpose is to create a police surveillance state. The purpose, folks, of government, if we agree with the Declaration of Independence that we just celebrated the 250th anniversary of, if we agree with those principles, government was created to protect our God-given rights. Not what we have in terms of the Declaration of Independence, what we have in the Bill of Rights. That's not saying, well, this is not something that government can do. But if a corporation wants to kill you, then government says, well, I'm not shooting people. It's this individual over here. It's like, that's why we have a government. You're supposed to stop this person who's killing people. You're supposed to stop the people who are killing our God-given liberties and creating a police surveillance state. Instead, they partner with them. And they come up with these corporate tactics saying, I've got a non-disclosure agreement. You can't talk about this. If you want to know where some of these flock cameras are, again, go to deflock.org. I just went there over the last weekend and saw where they were on the map, and I went by some of these things. I tell you, people are, we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well, what people are starting to do about these things. I got to tell you, I was told Karen, I said, I'm really tempted. But she reminded me I'm having a hard time even cutting the hedges here. So I don't think I can get a flock camera down. Just so local law enforcement knows, we'll take a different approach to get rid of these things. And we got to stop this corporate techno-fascism. Call it what it is. We understand these are surveillance centers. Thank you for joining us. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around. and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.